Obviously, if you have counterpoints to some of the teams that are being discussed, you're more than welcome to. But in just terms of structure, it makes more sense to do it this way. But before we talk about, we're going to talk about the big one, the Luka trade. So where were you guys at? Matt, I know you just said you finished having dinner. I was woken up by my brother at 2:30 in the morning to say Luka Doncic was traded to the Lakers, and I didn't believe him. And obviously, I was half asleep. Jared, I'm curious of what you were doing when the Luka trade went through.
Yeah, well, that was it was around sort of 4 or 5 in the afternoon over here in Australia when it broke. So very much awake and aware, unlike a lot of people in the States. It came through on a little WhatsApp chat of our fantasy basketball group, all tragic hoop heads, and we all looked at it and went, "No, that's got to be fake." And then we were going, "No, that's Sham's actual
Yeah.
account. What the hell is going on?" And then once we realized it was real, I called a mate of mine who, like, he lived in Dallas for years. His 2 kids, who I used to coach, are born in Dallas, and they were at an NBL game at the time. And he said to me, "No, I'm actually out getting a beer. I need one." He said I showed Will, who's his 14-year-old, that showed him his phone, and he said Will started to tear up, like devastated, absolutely devastated. The only effectively, since he started playing basketball, the only Mavericks he's known have had Luka. And yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, this is our generation of hoop heads. This is our moon landing moment.
Yeah. Right. It's like, look, you don't see somebody like him get traded at all. Like, you can make all the comparisons you want in any other sport. It's like, it's just inconceivable somebody like him. But let's dive into the trade.
Did you believe it at first? Sorry to interrupt. Did you believe your brother?
No. I thought at first, keep in mind, I'm half asleep and I'm over here thinking that Shams got hacked or something like that. It's like, no, I didn't believe it, because you don't think of something like that. And let alone for that little. Obviously, no disrespect to Anthony Davis, but like, we'll dive into it in a bit and shortly. But like, yeah, you just like, on objectively, you don't believe somebody like Luka Doncic gets traded like that. Jared, I'm gonna give you the Lakers. Matt, I'm gonna give you the Mavericks.
I just want to do like the evil Mr. Burns laugh, and that's the entire premise of my argument for what the Lakers did. Like, this was the grandest of larcenies. What got me was Nico Harrison saying in the presser, which, oh my God, rolled gold disaster. Oh, credit to Rob Pelinka for keeping it quiet. What else was he going to do? You were gifting him Luka Doncic. Like, the smartest thing to do was just shut up and let Nico Harrison, in effect, professionally hang himself. So this was not a credit to Pelinka. This was the only option Pelinka had. Shut up and let the other bloke do his own damage. Stunning. Absolutely stunning.
And it was the idea, like, they were saying, like, conditioning issues. Like, everybody was trying to figure out why. Just the fact that, like, one day you're thinking, like, LeBron and AD, maybe, like, the best years for the Lakers Lakers led by LeBron are behind them. But, you bring in, essentially LeBron 2.0 in terms of, like, being, like, taller point guard, being able to, like, see the floor and kind of get guys involved the way LeBron can do. And, like, in theory, you've added another couple seasons to LeBron's longevity, because now he can actually, this is like the first time in his career he can do less. So it's like, it's just still mind-boggling even days after to wrap your head around it.
Well, my last point on the benefit here for the Lakers is that people have spoken about LeBron saying that he was going to hand over the franchise to Davis on the court and never quite having it happen. But that's because Davis is not a genuine number one option on a top level team. He's a number two. Now they have a genuine number one option. I'll be interested to see how they mesh on the court and whether LeBron hands off a lot of the offensive responsibilities to Luka. And I'll close with a tweet that I saw. I don't know who said it, so apologies, I can't credit you, but I saw this magnificent tweet. How will the Lakers rebuild around LeBron once Luka retires?
That guy's a robot. Like, you seem like he's never going to retire. Like, he can play till he's 50, and even then. No, but yeah, all right. So we got the Lakers side. Obviously, it's like more or less cut and dry. You get one of the best players in the NBA. Matt handing you off with the Mavericks. They get Anthony Davis and Max Christie.
The fact that it's very funny how it looked like probably Nico, like once everything comes out, it's like, okay, Nico actually probably called Rob about Anthony Davis, and then there's probably like, oh, would you throw Luka in there? But the fact that Nico threw to rob this lifeboat. It was a lifeboat for the post-LeBron era. The reports suggested after the fact that the original offer, or one of the offers, was Yves, Connect, and a couple first-round picks. And I find it very, very funny how Rob was like, man, maybe he actually, the conditioning issues, like that might actually be like a troubling thing. Like, we'll still take Luka Doncic off your hands, but we got to negotiate that down a little bit. I think that's just a little bit too much for a guy of Luka Doncic's caliber. It's just like Nico, what the fuck are you doing? It's crazy to me that it was just like, okay, yeah, Anthony Davis plus Connect. That makes more sense than Anthony Davis, Christie, and a first round pick. I'm not going to try to defend it or anything, but like if you're just trying to grasp for straws or anything, Anthony Davis, ask and you shall receive. You're finally playing next to a 5 with Daniel Gafford. There's PJ there. There's Derek Lively, who's currently hurt. So you get that wish. I was watching a little bit of their game earlier, Davis's debut. Yes, he did leave the game with a lower body injury, but 26-16, 3 blocks. He was pretty good in that game. But they got the full Anthony Davis experience in one game. It only took him one. Christie isn't like, I know he kind of looked at as like a throw-in in this trade. He's actually been legitimately good for like a month. And he was one of the Lakers' best defenders. He was one of their best shooters before he got traded. Dallas gets a role player that will, fit in right away as kind of like this 2-3 tweener. But as for a grade, it's got to be a D or an F, because I'm trading away Luka Doncic. I'm alienating my fan base that's rallied behind Luka for 6-7 years. Like that's an indefensible thing. He's a top 3 basketball player at worst on the planet. And who gives a shit about the conditioning issues when he's averaging 32, 9 and 9, and he took you to the NBA finals? Like it doesn't make logical sense to trade a guy who's 25 years old, a superstar talent in the league, for a guy who's 6 years older, whose body's breaking down, or at least has shown to be breaking down, despite being one of the best two-way players in the league. It doesn't make logical sense, especially after you got carried to the NBA finals by this guy that you just traded. It just doesn't make any sense. Without only one first round pick, there wasn't even a swap in there. The teams throw in swaps like it's no one's business, but there was no swapping. Like what? Like, I don't understand the logic behind that from Dallas's perspective.
And that first round pick, Matt, as long as Luka re-signs, that
Right.
first round pick isn't going to be great. And
Oh,
as far as the conditioning, Luka's in LA now. The guy's going to be on a kale diet. He's with LeBron, who spends literally millions every year in his body. He's going to be lifting on Venice Beach. Like, he's going to be cut in 6 months.
And he's going to be pissed that he got.
He's already pissed.
Called me tubby. Like, fuck, I'm going to go off for 40 every game until I retire against against everyone. Like, what?
oh my God.
The one thing I'll say is that Dallas's arena is going to bear witness to some of the greatest offensive games ever. Unfortunately, they're going to be coming in a Lakers jersey. Every time he sets foot in that court, he's going to be breathing fire.
Matt, I need more trades like this to happen so you can just go on rants like that. That was great. So Matt gives the Mavericks getting Anthony Davis and Max Christie pretty much a nothing pick, an F. Jared, what do you get
How many pluses can I put next to that A?
You could put infinity if you want to.
Okay, A infinity plus. Let's go for it.
It's like, the one thing I'll say about
77 for Luka Doncic's number. You could put 77 in honor of Luka.
Yep.
Yeah,
that works.
The one thing I'll say is that the Laker fans can say they can get whoever they want now with the fact that they got Luka Doncic. Any crazy NBA trade that they try to cook up, I'll believe. But yeah, for the Mavericks side, Nico Harrison, you got maybe 2 years maybe left of your job, especially if move doesn't work out, and then you're gonna be fired and never gonna have a job in the NBA again. So you better hope something shakes. But anyways, that's his problem, not ours. So now next on the bracket, it's going to be De'Aaron Fox to the San Antonio Spurs. It was a team that he was always wanted. He wanted to go to. Porter, you wanted to go to the Spurs. So Matt, I will give you the Spurs, and Jared, I'll give you the Kings. I'll just say this about the Bulls because they were lumped in there, trading away Zach LaVine. I'll give them more of probably just a C. It was good that you got off Zach LaVine, but at the same time, it should have been a trade you guys should have did years ago before you got hurt. That I'll just say that for the Bulls. I'll give them.
I'll just add to the Bulls thing. There is a trend at the moment to try and trade for your own picks back. We've seen it with Brooklyn and so forth. The thing that kills me with Chicago, though, is they've traded for their own pick back from San Antonio, which is top 10 protected. In trading LaVine, you're going to be inside that top 10 anyway. They didn't need to trade for it back. They're going to get it back anyway. And that's just symbolic of the the directionless of that Chicago front office. They talk a great game, but they just, the proof is in the pudding, and they just mess it up consistently, astonishingly. But I'll let you go first because I went first on the last one. So Spurs away, my man.
Okay, I'll give this an like I think this is you got De'Aaron Fox without having to trade Castle. I don't think they were going to trade Castle anyway. I mean, if I was Sacramento, I would have demanded Castle, but I didn't think to do that anyway. You get this new kind of trio with Fox, Castle, and Wemby for the next however many years. In addition to, you kept all of your young players. You didn't trade Vassell, you didn't trade Keldon Johnson, you didn't trade Jeremy Sohan, you didn't trade any of these guys. You didn't even like Champagne's, but you didn't even get him in the deal. Like you kept practically all of your like most valuable young players, while also like you traded 4 first-round picks in the deal. One of them was, Chicago's own pick back. The Charlotte pick that they traded away, the 2025 lottery protected pick, will become 2 seconds because that's just how the protections of that pick work. Charlotte stinks. That pick's going to go to Charlotte. And so you're practically trading 2 first-round picks and 5 second-round picks in addition to the Chicago one that you just gave back. You keep the Atlanta pick that you have after Jalen Johnson gets hurt, which I think was one of their most valuable assets outside of the players that they already have. The other 2 picks that they traded was a 2027 Spurs first round pick. Sick. They're going to be like a top 7 team in the league. And then a 2031 Timberwolves pick, which I actually think may actually be a pick depending on Anthony Edwards' future and what. The Timberwolves are a dysfunctional organization. They have been forever. I don't think that's going to change in 2031, even though it's 6 years from now. So, time to be determined there. But like they really didn't trade away. It's not nothing, but it's not like anything of real tangible value. For De'Aaron Fox is one of the most tantalizing young point guards in the league. I know he's 27, so it's not like super duper young, but like you now have this core with Wemby, Castle, Fox. You keep your pick flexibility for future seasons because they're still going to have 2 first-round picks this year and 2 next year, or 1 next year. I think they may have, in addition to ones in future years, plus all of your young players. That's something that's really valuable for them as they continue to improve collectively with Victor Wembanyama, a generational talent.
Matt, would you say in terms of kind of just like the position that the Kings were in terms of negotiating with the Spurs, it seems like it was a really good chance that De'Aaron Fox was going to sign with the Spurs anyway. So do you think that had a lot to do with like the kind of like the haul they got back?
I think it was a little bit like when it gets leaked right after De'Aaron Fox or the report that, Sacramento was, listening to offers a week before the deadline. When it gets leaked that his target destination is San Antonio, as an organization like the Kings, you do lose a little bit of leverage. Funny enough, the Kings, Bulls, and Spurs were involved in a 3-team trade this most recent offseason. That was for DeMar DeRozan, when DeMar DeRozan went from Chicago over to Sacramento. Well, one of the things that Sacramento traded away in that deal to San Antonio was their 2031, it was an unprotected swap. San Antonio has been a team that's been collecting swaps forever, whether it's the Atlanta swaps that they get in the DeJounte trade. I know there was a couple other ones where they were just getting like first round pick swaps, and it's like that's not protected by the Stepien rule because it's a swap. And so they're just collecting swaps because teams and organizations are more willing to trade. Well, one thing, if I'm Sacramento, knowing I'm trading away De'Aaron Fox and who knows what Sabonis's future is like, I want my 2031 pick back. I know it's an unimportant pick or not unimportant, but like it's 6 years down the line. But that's something, if I'm an organization trading away my franchise player, that's something that I want back. And that's not even something that they negotiated, or maybe they did and they just didn't get it. But it just feels weird to me why the lack of talent they got. Like they couldn't even squeeze like Sohan out of that deal. Not that I'm just saying his name for the sake of saying his name. I'm not saying it would have fit or anything like that, but you know what I mean? Like they couldn't get Keldon Johnson back in the trade. Like it's weird to me why they took on a player like Zach LaVine, who's making 50+ million over the next, 2 years, 3 years, but they weren't willing to secure any young talent outside of City Sissoko, who they traded before the deadline anyway. And they traded him, I think, in the Valanciunas trade. But like, I just wanted them to get more young talent if I'm trading away a guy of De'Aaron Fox's caliber, regardless of losing some leverage. And sure, the first round picks, players on cost controlled contract are at a premium today. But I would like to have like an established talent at minimum if I'm a guy like De'Aaron.
That's very true. A lot of guys that you said on that Spurs team, a lot of guys that weren't involved in this De'Aaron Fox trade can very well be looped into other trades to get other stars to go and play with that new core guys. But anyways, Jared, I hand the floor off to you.
The trade in a vacuum, the Kings did okay in this simply because their hand was forced. Pete, as both of you have mentioned, Fox had put in a trade request and had specifically mentioned the Spurs. So San Antonio, smart front office that they are, they knew they had Sacramento over a barrel. Zach LaVine is really good. He's overpaid, sure, but it's not, the difference between the contract and the performance isn't a Brad Beal level of gap. So they got an excellent player back. And for the Kings, my eldest son is almost old enough to drive, and he's seen one playoff series for the Kings. That's how long they've been crap for. Staying relevant is really important. Matt, I loved your point about Keldon Johnson in particular. The Spurs don't really have a purpose for him, especially with Fox on board now, with extra guards around. So as well as getting LaVine, Monty McNair really should have been pushing to get Keldon Johnson, who is a really good player. He's just kind of marginalised with this new rotation the Spurs have. As much as in a vacuum, the Kings did okay, this whole scenario is a return to the legendary Kangs of old. The reason that they're over a barrel is because they fired their coach of the year, didn't put any media out around it outside of the short statement. The media, who really like Mike Brown, sort of circled the wagons around him. The Kings didn't come out and say anything which led to speculation that Fox was behind the move. Fox, of course, denied it. Whether it's true or not, I have no idea. But perception is reality. People thought Fox was the one who had, loaded the gun for the Kings front office, and he didn't like that. He didn't like being left hung out to dry, and that's where the trade request came in. If someone from the Kings just has a press conference, just puts out a statement, just has a Zoom meeting with some local reporters, Fox might still be a King. So the fact that, 6-7 weeks ago now, that they completely botched this firing of Brown, that has directly led to Fox wanting a trade. And yes, they've done the best they can in a tight situation, but they should never have been in that situation in the first place. The trade itself, given the scenario of, Fox's trade request being out there, I'd actually give them a B minus. I think they've done all right. They could have gotten more, but they've done all right. But I can't give them a B minus because the whole situation is of their own making. So I'm dropping it to a C minus.
Okay, that's very fair. I think for them, I think it was the idea. It's like you kind of hung your player out to dry, to your point, and yeah, it's just like the little things that could potentially snowball, and now you're out probably one of the better, or probably the best guard that you've had in your organization for a long time now. Matt gives the Spurs an A minus, and Jared gives them you said C minus, or was it C plus?
C minus.
C minus. Now we're going to go north of the border for the Brandon Ingram trade. We got Brandon Ingram going to Toronto, obviously. So we'll switch it up. Jared, you will get Toronto getting Brandon Ingram, and Matt, you will get New Orleans.
I'm old enough to remember when Masai Ujiri was hailed as a genius. And I just don't know what the plan is in Toronto. You've effectively gotten rid of Pascal Siakam for a lesser version of Pascal Siakam. Probably on his equal as a scorer, Ingram. He's certainly not anywhere near Siakam's level as a defender, and he's nowhere near his level of availability either. I don't know how Ingram fits with Barnes and RJ and quickly when he comes back. They're all really nice second options, third options, but there's no tentpole star. Like, this is a team that needs an alpha in the worst way. They've actually got a nice little core group of players, but that core group of players is going to top out at 40, 45 wins in a really good season. There's not anyone there that you can point to and say that's the star. That is the guy that they're building around. All these pieces are nice, but that's it. They're just nice. Yeah. I get the talent play. Ingram is better than the players they traded away. But yeah, I'm just not sure what the plan is. I mean, maybe Ujiri has an ace up his sleeve here that will happen in the offseason. I don't know. But since the Kawhi trade and the Marc Gasol trade, really, what has he done that inspires a lot of confidence? Like, the fact that Ingram is better than what they gave away, I'll give this a B minus. I would have given it a much better grade if I knew what the plan was. I just don't see a plan outside of winning each individual trade and seeing what happens.
I would ask this, with Ingram now being a part of the Raptors, would you say he's the best player on the team now, or would you still kind of give it to someone like Scotty Barnes?
Probably Barnes. But again, RJ, Barnes, Ingram, they all sort of hold the same pecking order level. So I don't know who's going to emerge as the alpha in that team, if anyone. Realistically, I don't think Barnes has it offensively. I think he's just going to top out as a 2 or a 3 on a good side. Like he's in effect a lesser version of he's the modern day knockoff of Pippen, essentially. Great defender, really good offensive player. And I'm not saying he's as good as Pippen. Clearly, I don't think he's going to get to that level, but he's that type of player. And we saw what happened with Pippen, again, better than Barnes, when he had to lead a side in MJ's absence. It just didn't work. It was a good team, that Bulls team, but it wasn't nearly championship level. And I think that's where, as all of these players start to develop, I just can't see Toronto being anything more than a 5th or a 6th seed at their best.
Yep, one piece away it seems very likely, and like I don't hate the Ingram trade, but I think it's just a little bit more freedom personally for Ingram to play and not deal with a bunch of like the fours New Orleans has. So
Pop one more point in, bit of an X's and O's point. Barnes, Barrett, Quickly, and Ingram. None of them are great off-ball players. They all need the basketball in their hand, and that's where I'm really not sure how this is going to work. The only one of their top 5 who doesn't need the ball in his hand is Pirtle, and you wouldn't really want the ball in Pirtle's hands trying to create anyway. What he does really well, but creativity is not his thing. Yeah, I'm just not sure how this is going to work on the court, let alone the front office plan. I'm very skeptical on how this is going to work.
And to add on to that, they just paid Scotty Barnes. They just paid Emmanuel Quickly. RJ Barrett's already under the books. I don't know how many more years, but like he's making it like a decent chunk of change. Brandon Ingram's a free agent in the offseason. And I guess from Toronto's perspective, they find it, considering Toronto's not, a destination to attract free agents, whether they're good or bad, most of the time, like this is like their way of doing that.
Well, that may explain the fact that may explain why he was so cheap as well. Yeah, there's no sort of, we know how these things work. There's a lot of under the table agreements on extensions. I'm sure we'll get to Jimmy Butler. But the fact that he hasn't been extended, maybe that's the reason why he's so cheap. There's no guarantee that he's going to stay.
I mean, yeah, if I'm Toronto, it's like I'm not willing to give up that much. Who knows? But they just paid all these guys, and I don't know if I like Scotty. I like Emmanuel Quickly. Some of those contracts I'm a little weary of. Today's NBA economy with the second apron, a little bit weary of, and like of course you can maybe use like a Quickly as like a salary filler in a bigger trade. Still a very good young point guard. Same with Barrett. Like he feels like, again, I don't know what his contract looks like specifically, but I think it's going to be coming up pretty soon. So like he's also someone that who I think's played well in Toronto when he's been available. Like that could be something that you could consider moving if you want to for someone else, and if you want to fast track this build around Ingram and Scotty, if that's your plan, that there's ways to do that. But it is a very strange move. I'm completely with you there.
Yeah, and you got we'll see how it works out throughout the rest of the season. Obviously, like it wouldn't look good with Ingram, signing elsewhere, of course. But Matt, diving into New Orleans, obviously with Ingram gone, it kind of opens up the floor in a sense in terms of depth for like Herb Jones and Trey Murphy. So if you could dive into like New Orleans, getting back Kelly Olynyk and Bruce Brown, a couple picks.
It's New Orleans has been mired by injuries all season. They've just been hammered. DeJounte Murray's out for the season. I know he like broke his wrist or something. Like his first game as a Pelican. Zion's been oft injured. Ingram, the guy they just traded, has been out for 2 months and with no timetable for a return because of an ankle injury. In addition to other injuries, like Herb has been in and out. Like they've just been beat up with him. That's why I think that their record, I don't know exactly what it is right now, but it's reflective of that. Well, I love Bruce Brown. He is on an expiring. It is weird that they're not buying him out. There were reports that came out after the deadline that he's sticking there. Considering the direction that they're going in, that feels a little strange to me. It's only $23 million. He feels like a guy that'll win them games, even though I know he's been hurt for most of the season. But I mean, I'm very curious to see if they actually explored trading him at the deadline, because again, he is kind of like an attractive, Swiss Army knife role player. I would just buy him out at this point if he's still there. They're not doing that, which I find very curious. I like Olynyk. former Heat legend, as we all like to call him. 12.8 million this year. I think he's around 13 next year. Like, it's nothing, not an inexpensive contract. Again, he's another guy where I wonder if they were thinking about trading him at the deadline and trying to reflip him. They obviously didn't. They were able to get a couple of picks back. Like, I think the return is fine. The 2026 first that they got back, I don't know if there's any protections on it, but it's from Indiana, probably back in the first round or like middle to end of the first round. You're probably like around like the 20-ish range. It's fine. A 2031 second from Toronto, cool. Like, that's fine. I'd probably give this like if they traded Brown for more assets, and if they traded Olynyk, or if they traded Olynyk for more assets, or both, I probably would have given them a higher grade just because of the direction that they're going in. They tried to trade CJ or some of these other guys. I would have given them a higher grade. They're right in the thick of the capture the flag sweepstakes. Again, Bruce Brown's going to win them games. Kelly O, good backup to Misi. He might win them some games. I don't know. Maybe I'm just projecting here, but if I'm New Orleans right now, I'm trying to lose games. Not that anyone outside of flag a bad consolation prize. This draft is loaded. I'd probably give him like a C. Painfully average return, especially if you're not buying out, specifically Brown.
And it's like, the idea of this Pelican squad is it's like you tried it and you brought in CJ, you got Ingram. Obviously, Ingram was good for a couple of seasons, and then obviously you ship him off. Zion's been, hurt, and then the times he has played, he's been good, but he hurt in the most important times of the season. If you ask me personally, I would say they should, like, just going off the back of what you're saying, trade guys like CJ, maybe kind of figure out who you want to keep around, Trey Murphy, and keep around like guys like Herb Jones or those forwards, build for the future, and just see what you got with those guys by shipping off someone like, the vets like CJ probably be at the top of that list. But
they may want to keep Bruce Brown. They may want to keep Bruce Brown.
Right.
I don't know.
All right, Matt, you give the Pelicans, you give them a C, and Jared, you give the Raptors a B. So next on the slate, we are going with the Jimmy Butler to the Warriors. Matt, just give you a bit of a challenge. I'm going to give you the Warriors. I'll make sure you have the floor to talk about Miami in a little bit. But Jared, I will let you. You will get Miami.
Well, good on Jimmy for proving that throwing your toys out of the pram still works in 2025. I would have loved to have seen this not work, maybe. And look, I'm very much a player empowerment type of guy, but there are ways to do it that, you are a professional, theoretically. So do it professionally. Don't do it like this. Don't do it like James Harden. Hey, what works, works. If you got talent, hey, convicted felon, can you shoot a jump shot? Great, you're in. It's... if you got skills, I hate to bring up his name, but Miles Bridges, if he was a lesser player, he would not be in the NBA right now with what he's done. But look, this is a clear downgrade on the court for Miami. Nice pieces, maybe Wiggins, who is still, I think he's still only 28. Jimmy Butler himself has said he's the most naturally gifted basketballer he's ever played with. He found a level when he went from a shit show in Minnesota to the Warriors. Maybe now he finds something, this will be a true test of hashtag Heat culture. Can they find another level in Wiggins, or at the very least, bring him back to what he was in the championship season in 2022? It is a clear downgrade, but at the same time, it's also an upgrade because Butler was never going to wear a Heat uniform again. Yes, the return isn't as good as Butler, but it's also better than nothing. I really hope that this does swing a little bit of or signal a little bit of a swing to some of the younger guys. I have been one of the biggest Nikola Jovic stands since the moment he came into the NBA as a 9-year-old. He still looks like he's 12, by the way. Like, that man, I'm not even sure I should call him a man. I feel like I should call him a child. He's just an incredibly tall, like, preteen when you look at his face. But yeah, like, I'm hoping this does signal a little bit of a move towards those younger guys. We've seen Khalil Ware step in as a 5, allowing Bam to play as a 4. There looks to be a new methodology on the court. I think Eric Spoelstra is the best coach in the NBA. And he's at his best when he hasn't an island of misfit toys, when he can get in the lab and get really, really creative. And this is an opportunity for him to do that. So I honestly think we could see the Heat go on a little bit of a run here, because they have a talent upgrade over Butler, being at home, but also this allows Spoelstra to do what he does best. Yes, it's a talent downgrade, but I'm going to give this a B+, simply because it does get rid of a massive headache. And Pat Riley certainly could have handled this better. I know he's handled it in his very specific way. It's not the 80s anymore, Patrick. You do need to, deal with these stars with a little bit more tact. But ultimately, he got what he wanted, which is Butler off the team. So he's gotten a reasonable return, and I think Miami will be better on the court for it. And I am really looking forward to watching what Spoelstra does with this new makeup that he's got.
Matt,
Are you asking me to do the Warriors or respond?
no, you can respond. You can respond. I know you've probably been itching to talk about the about Miami. So go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I agree. You want me to flip it? Okay. No, I agree. I agree. Like, I was someone from the beginning wanted Andrew Wiggins. I think it irked me from the beginning. A lot of things about this irked me. One thing that irked me a shit ton was anywhere but Miami. No, but actually just Phoenix only. And that part irked me. I know Golden State's interest was on and off. I know Jimmy, the one organization that we knew Jimmy didn't want to go to was Jackson, the Memphis Grizzlies. Like it bothered me that it was just Phoenix only for so long. They tried to get off the Beal contract. They couldn't find a suitor because guess what? Bradley fucking Beal has a $52 million no trade clause. And it's Bradley Beal. He's not worthy of that. And so it was like, no one's going to take that on. Now they're trying to trade Durant and all these. It was just a weird thing. But like, if Golden State's interest was real, I said from the start that I wanted Andrew Wiggins. Was the second most important player on a championship team a few years ago. 29 years old. He fits perfectly into what they want to do. From like, if they want to switch more with Bam, Ware, Tyler, he can fit perfectly into that as being one of their best point of attack defenders. They need point of attack defense, and he's someone that can absolutely fit into that. In addition to some of the other guys that they have. In terms of what else they got in, not to belabor on about Andrew Wiggins and like 3-and-D, very good offensive rebounder, shot blocker. They got Davion Mitchell, if you were to create a 6'1" guard in Pat Riley's lap, Davion Mitchell would be like the perfect guy it would just be Davion Mitchell. He is just such a pain in the ass. He was nicknamed Off Night when his first month in the league, because every dude who he guarded would have an off night. He's my size. I'm not very big. I don't have an NBA basketball body, and he's my size, and he's just such a pain in the goddamn ass because he's just always up in your grill. He's in your jersey. He's relentless. And the fact that they were able to swing PJ Tucker, who's older than our founding fathers, for Davion Mitchell, that's a win. Kyle Anderson's fine. I'm going to hate watching him shoot, but I like everything that he does on a basketball court. Slow-mo. He's just a very smart, cerebral player. It's very funny watching how defenses get thrown off because of how slow he is. That's going to be fun. But no, I think I like this return for the Heat. For guess what? A player that did not want to be there. A player that quit on his team and quit on the fan base that loved him for 6 years. That's something I'm never going to forget. The moment that Pat Riley challenged him, even though Pat Riley may be a curmudgeon at this stage of his life, challenged him, and Jimmy kind of failed. He kind of crumbled. For someone who came in 6 years ago and expressed how much he loved the militant shit, the militant lifestyle, the no-nonsense leadership. And then now, the moment that he does get challenged by the team's president, one of the most respected figures in basketball history, kind of crumbled. And I'm never going to forget that. Not that I have anything against Jimmy. I love Jimmy. The whole 2 months was so goddamn annoying, frustrating, and I was just so tired of it. And I take a deep breath that it's finally over. And they got a few players that I like, so I can't complain.
Yeah, you can enjoy the true essence of like Heat basketball now, because you have some guys that want to come in and play every night. Yeah, it's the idea. It's crazy. It's crazy how far we came, Matt. I remember we recorded day after game 7 of the 23 Eastern Conference Finals, and just like
Yeah.
even after talking to you when Jimmy was going on that crazy run against the Bucks and whatnot, and yeah, it's just crazy how time time just changes that.
I love
Jimmy.
Jimmy. Really top 3 player in franchise history. No disrespect to Alonzo Mourning, but I love that dude. I'll remember it for what it was. Now, I'm good. I don't care.
Why don't you elaborate more on Jimmy's future now, since it's no longer in a Heat jersey with Golden State?
One, I like this for Golden State in the short term, more so than the long term. And I say that in the short term as one, I mean, again, Jimmy really hasn't played much basketball over the last month. It's not like he was injured or whatever. He was just getting suspended multiple different times for X, Y, and Z. So in the short term, I think he's going to be motivated. I think his legs are going to be healthy. Like one thing that I was very leery of, and I think I remember talking to you about this. He has an injury history, specifically in his lower half of his body with the knee. He's coming off the worst knee injury of his career with sprained MCL that he had in the playing game. He's sprained his ankle, several different times, including in the playoffs 2 years ago. Like he's a guy who's missed 20 to 25 games each of the last few years, and most of that's been due to injury. I know last year it was a lot of personal reasons. I mean, rest in peace his father, who unfortunately passed away, and that's very tragic and very upsetting just from like a personal standpoint. And I know like the second half of last year he just didn't want to, his mind wasn't there. I tried to give him that benefit of the doubt. You never know what some of these guys are going through, but like he's going to be motivated. I think he's like excited and ready. It's a fresh new start, and so I like this in the short term for Golden State, even though I'm very curious to see his on-court fit, because he is a much better shot creator than Andrew Wiggins. There's no question about it. He can create his own shot out of the mid post. I know Golden State, they run a lot of split action and stuff like that where he'll get mid post touches. And specifically in the split action, it's much more dangerous if you have a guy in the post who's a threat. And he is a guy who's always a threat. And so that's something that it's different it's different from the way that he's ever played, because Golden State runs this very motion laden, there's a lot of screens, Steph's running around 100 miles in a game. There's a lot of motion. There's a lot of different moving pieces, quite literally. And that's never been Jimmy's specific style, but I think they need someone who plays like Jimmy. That's where I think I'm very interested to see how this works. But in the long term, I'm very leery of it. Steph is going to be 37 in a month. Draymond's going to be 35 in a month. Jimmy's going to be 36 in September. If you have those guys accounting for nearly 90% of your salary cap each of the next 2 seasons in today's NBA, where there's so many good teams in the West, and this is your all-in move, you don't have any flexibility to do anything else unless if you trade Draymond, which I don't know if you will get a realistically good return for a guy of Draymond Green's caliber, despite what he's done throughout his career, because of his age, because of whatever. I think this was a 2 years too late type deal, where it was they struck out on Paul George, they struck out on Larry Markkinen, they also struck out on Kevin Durant, who didn't want to go back there at the deadline. They were exploring a ton of moves to get this next star alongside Stephen Curry to take off that pressure. While Jimmy Butler, he's not very much removed from having 35, 19, and 10 against Detroit, which he had in December. He can still be a really good caliber player. But in the long term, with Jimmy's body breaking down, with Steph hasn't been good the last month, at least in terms of his 3-point shooting. With Draymond, whoever the fuck knows if he's going to get suspended again or whatever. We don't. That's a unknown factor in and of itself. This is what desperate organizations do, and I don't love this for Golden State in that respect. But I think there is some short-term benefit. He will help them win games, but there is a chance that if they're a playing team in a very loaded Western Conference, that a guy of Jimmy's caliber can get them over the top and be a playoff team. But what is their legitimate ceiling with Jimmy, Steph, and Draymond at this stage of each of their career? I don't think it's very high, whether it's this year or the next 2 years. I would personally give it a C+ because of I like it in the short term, but not the long term.
And Jared, I'll let you chime in a sec.
Yep.
I will say that this is a larger issue in terms of kind of these aging former all-stars still commanding prime player money, and that's the most I'm going to say, $121 million for a 35-year-old Jimmy Butler. It's I get it, Golden State, you're desperate, you get a star, but $121 million for a 35-year-old who has lower body issues, crazy. But I'm just gonna say my piece about that.
This is this deal's clearly a favor to Curry. At the moment, the Warriors aren't playing games that are particularly relevant. Butler doesn't give them a championship ceiling, definitely. Well, I don't think so anyway. I'm with you on that, Matt. But it at least makes them relevant again. And that's really all that the Warriors can do. At least have Steph right off into the sunset playing games that matter, as opposed to what happened with Dirk and Dallas, or even Kobe with the Lakers. Those teams were bad when those guys finished up. Now, I haven't got it in front of me, but I'm quite sure that Butler's contract finishes at the same time as Curry's and Steve Kerr's. So I think this is the proverbial last charge of the Warriors. And at the end of 2 years, we may see all of them walk off into the sunset together, potentially Draymond as well. I think he's contracted for an extra year, but there's every chance that once Curry and Kerr go, that that Draymond will go with them. And Butler's contract will be up by then. Maybe he sits there and goes, well, I'm 38 years old and or I'll be 38 when my next season starts and my body's breaking down and I've just made 120 million over the last 2 years. I think I'm good. So for me, this is purely a let's not have Steph toiling in obscurity. Let's at least give the guy a half decent team to go out on. It's not the greatest move, but it's a good move for the best player ever to play for the club.
Yeah, so it's going to be real interesting those next 2 years because, and just to kind of chime in on the Jimmy Butler side, is like you check Jimmy Butler's Instagram story, he said championship incoming. So it's like he has high expectations for himself with the Warriors. So that's going to be.
He's always been that.
Very true.
Every time in Miami, he was like, we're going to win a championship. And like,
Yep.
as a player, you have to have that kind of irrational confidence. You have to have that fake it till you make it mentality. That's why these guys get to where they're at. And Jimmy's defied the odds throughout his entire life. Of being like, he was a JUCO player. He was kicked out of his house when he was 13 years old. He was a JUCO player before he was, it was either JUCO or Division II, and then he goes to Marquette, a first round pick, earn every single minute that he gets under Tom Thibodeau, and like he
barely
just
a first round.
Yeah, I want to say he was like one of the
30th,
last
right.
picks of the first round. No,
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly.
2011 draft, I remember that.
Yeah, and so it's like he's had to earn his way throughout his entire life, and he became this folklore figure in Miami with Spoelstra, with Bam, for the runs that he's made. Like, it was undoubtedly a successful run in one of the best eras outside of the big three, perhaps the best. It was incredible. And again, whether it was the finals in the bubble or if it was, that historically great run in 23, like he's always been, nah, man, we're going to win the championship. Yeah, unfortunately, they weren't able to get the job done, but like, you have to have that kind of confidence. So him saying that in Golden State, like, I respect it, because even if you disagree with it, you still have to kind of have that mentality. And guess what? Draymond and Steph are probably the same way in their own sense. So it's like you kind of have to have that mentality if you're a player, because you just have to trick yourself into believing it. But like, there's a reason why Jimmy Butler, when he is right, when he is awesome, a top 20 player in the sport, and like in previous years, a top 10 player, or at least playing like one. That you have to get to that. You have to kind of have that irrational confidence.
All very good points. And I'll say this about the Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green dynamic. I just seen Twitter have a field day with, now that those guys are on the same team together. As soon as they have a disagreement on the court, there's not going to be no back and forth. They're just going to be throwing a fisticuffs in the locker rooms. But I
have a theory. I have a little theory on how that's going to go. You think about the people that Butler has blown up at over the years. It's been the meek people. It's been young Towns, young Wiggins. It's it's Simmons. It's a young Embiid. He's always blown up with the guys who he doesn't feel are at his level. But Matt said something before. As soon as he was challenged by Pat Riley, he folded. So for me, Butler is one of these guys who lords it over the people below him, but understands that he can be lorded over. So I think Draymond, being just a bad son of a bitch, but also having all of the institutional gravitas he has as a lifetime Warrior, as a Hall of Famer for that club, I think Jimmy will probably fall into line. And look, if he doesn't, we'll get another TMZ video. Win-win.
I was gonna say, Jared, that was a very polite way to say Draymond would knock him the fuck out in the locker room if he says something. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at that.
Can we just touch on Cam Johnson, since he's come up in this conversation? How was he not traded? Like, surely there were people after him. Was Brooklyn's price too high, or were they sitting there going, well, we're losing enough now, we don't need to trade the guy unless we get bowled over? I'm fascinated by his lack of movement.
It's got to be something to do with the price, because I would imagine there would be some sort of bidding. And if your floor price is 2 first-round picks plus whatever salary you have to match along with it, and then there's a bidding war with it. Like, for example, if I'm Oklahoma City, I would have called up, been like, here, any of my 700,000 first-round, pick 2 of them, pick 3 of them, I don't care how efficient of a shooter he is, rebounding, his defensive capabilities. He's a guy that I would have tried to pry away from a team, but it had to have been with the asking price relative to some of these other guys like again, DeAndre Hunter. Like, I don't think you probably have to give up a little bit more than Karras, Niang, 2 first round swaps plus 3 second-round picks for a guy like Cam Johnson, especially if you're in a bidding war with some of these other teams. But like, I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't really know what Brooklyn's thought process was there, even though they didn't have to trade him now because he still has a couple more years on his contract.
I only say this half jokingly, but why not call up Nico Harrison? Have a private negotiation with him. Derek Lively's suddenly expendable. They've got a whole bunch of centers in Dallas now. Go for Lively, maybe Hardy or Omax and a first round pick. See what you can get.
I think honestly, if I had to put my 2 cents in about it, the idea, like, you look at Cam Johnson, dude, is kind of like the prototypical player you would want on your team in the modern day NBA. Tall, can shoot. He's averaging nearly 20 points a game. I would say, like, his contract, I would say his contract is looking pretty good. He's 28. He's not gonna be a free agent until he's 31. Brooklyn, and the thing is how efficient, shooting nearly 50% from the field, shooting over 40% from three, and yeah, a cost control guy will give you offense, and you can do other things well. He can shoot the ball really well for his height as well. Like, if I was Brooklyn, I think the thing is the fact that he's still on a controllable contract is probably the reason why they were asking for a little bit more. Maybe if it was on a 2 year or even 1 year left on his deal, they probably could have got a trade done, because you saw teams like the Pacers and whatnot trying to get after him. There was rumors and whatnot. But yeah, it was very surprising that he didn't get moved. But now thinking about it, OKC would have been fantastic of a fit, in my opinion. But yeah, who knows? For all we know, we're going to be having the same conversation this time next year.
Isn't his contract also front loaded?
Kind of front loaded, I would say, because he's making 24 million. He made 24 million last year. He's making 22 and a half this year. Next year's 20, and then it's back up to 22 and a half.
Okay. That's what I thought it was something like that, but that's even more of a team friendly contract and more of a reason why I was trying to trade for it if I'm
Right.
another team. The cap is going to spike once this new TV deal hits. The max it can go in this new CBA is 10% each year. I foresee 10% each of the next few years. And so that cap is going to spike, meaning the percentage of cap that Johnson allocates for is going to be much lower than it would be if there was 8% raise, which there's not. It's a decreased salary. And so that's where it's like, I would be trying to trade for that if I am an opposing team, because of how team friendly that is and how friendly that can be for my books in this second apron account. But that's neither here nor there. A team will try. I'm guessing a team will try to do it in the offseason if they don't do it. If they didn't do it now, it behooves Brooklyn to at least consider the packages. I mean, again, we're not privy to the conversations of what are the actual packages from Johnson. We just know of the asking price for him. It behooves them to try to move him at some point, because a team is going to knock the door down, or multiple teams will knock the door down for a player like him, as they should. He's shown he can play winning basketball on a damn near championship level team in Phoenix, and he's only getting better.
And he's 28. He's 28. He's going to be aged out of his prime by the time Brooklyn are ready to compete again. So why not get something? Well, as you said, he's on a good contract. Yes, you'll have to pay him a lot more, at his next contract, but he'll still only be 30 when that contract finishes. You can imagine that he will stay in his prime until he's 33, 34. So his next contract will effectively cover the rest of his prime. So you're still going, unless it's a dramatic overpay, you're going to get value.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. I think for him, especially, just like if he can maintain what he's kind of already been able to do, like a bunch of contending teams for sure are going to be definitely in on him. So it's going to be really interesting to see where he's at in coming to the off season and the following seasons, if he's still with Brooklyn this time next year. But Cam Johnson, that's going to be a name to look out for. And guys, I think I'm down to one more trade. Are we ready? We're doing for the kind of cap it all off. We're doing
which Dennis Schroeder trade is it?
Obviously it's a kind of like a tier below, but I still think this is a great trade. At least for one side, depending on where you are. But DeAndre Hunter to the Cleveland Cavaliers, getting traded from the Atlanta Hawks. So Matt, how about you take the Cavaliers in this sense, and Jared, you get the Hawks?
Look, this is a trade where our season is down the toilet as soon as Jalen Johnson went down. There is an argument to be made that he is our best player ahead of Trae Young, and we've had some nice successes this year. Okongwu has finally stepped into a starting role. Dyson Daniels has been a revelation. If I offered Dyson Daniels now for DeJounte Murray, or if I was offered DeJounte Murray for Dyson Daniels now, I'd turn it down. DeAndre Hunter has is having a career year in a new role as a sixth man. And this might be what he is now, but it also could be a peak that he doesn't reach again. So we're basically taking the risk here that this is a bit of an outlier season and we're trading high. We got a good price. In Karis LeVert, good player. George Niang, a lovely reserve piece who has this incredible knack of being on winning teams. And it also helps that Quinn Snyder is really familiar with him. If you remember, he got his break as a rotation player in Utah for Quinn Snyder. We've also made some changes with Bogdanovic and picked up some players. That's all nice. Terran player. We're clearly moving towards a long-limbed, speedy, quick twitch defensive team around Trae Young. And as Hunter's a decent defender, but he's not that level of defender. LeVert isn't necessarily that sort of guy either, but at the same time, we've picked up for it. So, hey, if we can swing LeVert for something else, great. I'm looking at this as a pure sell high on a season that isn't going anywhere. I would give it a B plus simply because personally, I think that this is probably 110% of Hunter's level. I think he dropped from this season.
I love the idea of that they're trying to sell high. Obviously, DeAndre Hunter on my fantasy team because he was definitely a diamond in the rough. He's averaging like 18 off the bench. Even then, like going forward, if he's the kind of the gunner six man off the bench that can be that spark plug and get you 18 points on any given night, that's a great production for somebody like him, and he's still young. But Matt, I'll let you elaborate more with the fit in Cleveland. Obviously, the number one bench scorer going to, I believe, the number one offense in the NBA.
Yeah, man, I like this for Cleveland. I don't know if I'm as high on it as some others are, but I do very much like it. I kind of wish Cleveland would have gone out and got a guy like Cam Johnson. I hold Cam Johnson in a higher regard than I would DeAndre Hunter, but DeAndre Hunter, I mean, he figured it out in year 6. It took him a little bit. I think that's just a testament to Quinn and his staff, what they've instilled in him. 19 on 39% shooting from deep, 4 rebounds a game. He's a solid defender. The question that I have is okay, you're with Mitchell, you're with Garland. I kind of wish Cleveland got more of a connective piece. I don't know if Hunter is the connective piece, like a playmaker or someone of that. Kind of like how LeVert, LeVert's a little bit of a ball stopper as well, but I think Hunter is more so a ball stopper, but he's still a very efficient player. He's still a very good scorer. He can start for them right away. I am with you guys. I think he drops a tick down. I don't know if that's a bad thing. I don't think he continues to average, 19 and 4 on very good efficiency. But I like this for Cleveland because it shows they did give up a chunk. They did give up, I think, a couple of first round swaps. They did give up a few second round picks. It's not nothing. But I do like this move for Cleveland. I'm probably in the B plus, A minus range. Again, I wish a team would have tried to pry away Cam Johnson from Brooklyn, but did not happen. So I think DeAndre Hunter is a very good basketball player. And again, he's figured it out. He's in his age 27 season. He's done a very good job. I know for a while I was just very upset with how Atlanta was developing him. I think Quinn has done a phenomenal job, and I do think Quinn's a very good developmental coach. So I think it was just another byproduct of that. And so I like this move for Cleveland.
Yeah, I think that was a lot of good points from both sides, and most definitely the Cavs were looking to kind of reinforce their lead on the Celtics in the Eastern Conference and trying to suit up for that playoff run, and getting somebody like him I think is great without, at least in my opinion, not giving up too much. I think Atlanta, like Jared, again to your point, trying to sell high, and I think kind of give even more responsibility to guys like Daniels and others. Of course, I'd like the trade a little bit more for Cleveland. We're doing for the kind of capital offer doing
which Dennis Schroeder trade is it?
He was passed around like the bubonic plague, man. It was awful.
Jeez. Modern slavery, man. Modern slavery.
Talking about the Chris Middleton to the Wizards trade, or also the Kyle Kuzma to the Bucks trade. So Matt, I will give you the Wizards, and Jared, you will cap off with the Bucks.
Well, I'll kick this one off, and I'm glad you gave me the Bucks. My youngest son is a fanatical Bucks fan. Chickster, I know you're watching this. He still wears that Ray Allen singlet that you bought him. Goes with him everywhere. When I broke the news to him on Friday night our time that that the team had picked up Kuzma, he's like, oh, we got Kuzma. And I know clearly he hasn't watched Kuzma this season. But I mean, it's Washington. Who watches them? Even Washington fans don't watch Washington. But he's like, oh, that's a good pickup. And I've gone, yeah, you're not going to like who you got rid of him for. And he's like, not Giannis. Like, no. We wouldn't have traded Lillard. Did we trade Lopez or Middleton? And you can see the cogs turning. And he's like, oh no, we traded Middleton. So, yep. And he was devastated. And look, that's more of a historical thing for him is that, beloved, second best player on a championship team, all that sort of thing. So he was pretty shattered by that. And we did watch the Bucks game yesterday, Kuzma's debut, and he made me turn it off at halftime just because he was absolutely disgusted by the way Kuzma was playing. So this is a 13-year-old who was just like, nah, I'm out on this trade. Trying to look at it with a little bit more of a dispassionate view. Middleton is 32 with 42-year-old ankles. He fluctuates wildly game by game as a result. There's been games where he's put up 22 and 8 assists, and the old Middleton Giannis two-man game looks like it hasn't aged a day. And then there's other games where he moves like I do. It's really, really difficult to watch. And it's difficult for Doc Rivers to plan around what Middleton he's going to get. I'm sure they probably could have gotten a better return than Kuzma. I would have loved to have seen them try to maybe throw a pick with Middleton for Cam Johnson. I would have thought he would have been a perfect Middleton replacement. The hope here is that Kuzma, in an organization that is actually serious and with games that mean something, that he rediscovers a level of on-court professionalism, of judiciousness, decision making, and shot selection. It might take a little while. It might take 2 or 3 weeks, so it's probably a tough trade to judge based off one game. But at the moment, I'm going to take the positive view and give this a B on the hope that Kuzma can rediscover the best version of himself, because unfortunately for Middleton, the best version of himself is in the rear view.
That's a good stance to have. I would say Middleton. I said it before that because they also brought in Marcus Smart in terms of we're talking about the Wizards. Like Middleton, I could see him being on a contender this time next year. Like I don't see him in a Wizards jersey for long. Kuzma, to your point, it's like he was a part of the 2020 Lakers when they won the chip, and there was high hopes for him while he was playing with the Lakers and being, a quality role player. He goes to the Wizards. He's able to kind of like have offensive freedom. I believe he averaged 20 points a game, at least not this season, but last year. But obviously it was, kind of empty stats on a bad team. So the idea of putting him back into somewhat of a team that's trying to win now, obviously like they'll probably keep him in check in terms of the antics and whatnot. So it's going to be interesting and intriguing to see how it kind of works out. I think if he can kind of start getting back to what he was in terms of when he was playing for the Lakers, being more of a positive than a net negative on the court and off the court, and around Giannis and Damian Lillard, the Bucks could be in a good spot, at least in terms of a positive outlook.
I love this trade for one reason. It has absolutely nothing to do with basketball. Did you gentlemen see that ESPN graphic with Chris Middleton and Marcus Smart together in Photoshop?
The new
What
Wizards
was the
duo.
intern's reaction who had to do that Photoshop when asked, hey, can you make a Chris Middleton and Marcus Smart Wizards jersey duo graphic? If I was that intern, I'd be like, wait, what'd you just say? No, I actually wouldn't have said that. One of the funniest pictures I think I've ever seen, because so incredibly not blasphemous, but like it's just something I would have never thought ever in my life that Chris Middleton.
Put that on your bingo card.
Yeah. And Marcus Smart in a Wizards jersey in the year of our Lord 2025. You had to make the money work, so Middleton was involved in it. He has a player option for next year. Probably move off of that. If you're Washington, I know they were able to get a first round pick out of it, which is cool. I want to say it was like a 2028 swap or something like that. Like not a great pick, but it was a 2028 swap previously owned by Milwaukee, with them in like another like bad team that I think they'll have Milwaukee's pick at that. The part that I do like about this trade is AJ Johnson. AJ Johnson was like, I believe he played, Jared, was it Australia or New Zealand? Like somewhere?
Yeah. He played in the NBL and he was, I mean, he was so undercooked. He was still mooing in the NBL. Like he was like he was raw as all hell.
He was very raw.
The kid's got talent, but he needs a lot of time to gestate.
I remember because the first time I watched him was during the draft combine, and he was someone that he caught my eye. Oh, again, very raw with his ability, but I think there's something there with that. And then I've watched a little bit with him. Yeah, he's 20 years old, but I do think Washington does get like a developmental piece. Again, I have no idea. You could tell me it flames out and it's a disaster, or you could tell me he's actually a rotation level NBA player in a couple of years. I would believe either outcome at this point. Getting Chris Middleton in a trade plus a pick plus whatever for Kyle Kuzma, they sold low on because Kyle Kuzma was having just a horrific season up to this point from an efficiency standpoint, especially relative to where he was the last couple of years. This is a guy that okay, I'm a bad team. I know I'm bad. I'm one of the worst teams in the entire league. Okay, now I have a developmental piece to see if I could tap into a little bit. Yeah, he's still very, very raw and bold, still very, very skinny too. Like he's going to need to put on a bunch of weight to be a functional player at the NBA level. But he's got good size to him. He's got, I think, skill offensively. And so that's something that I do like about this trade, in addition to that very funny graphic that I can't believe was actually made. It's just a very funny trade. I'm surprised Chris Middleton wasn't rerouted somewhere else. I want to say there were reports suggesting that they wanted or they were trying to do that, but didn't. I'm surprised he wasn't rerouted, even though that is a lot of money for a player who has old man ankles.
Yeah, I would say Middleton's probably, like I said earlier, he's probably going to be on the way out sooner rather than later. Probably just wraps up the season with Washington, and then finds his way on to a contending team. But the idea for, obviously, it's all like the eyes will be more shooting towards Milwaukee in this sense, see how Kuzma fits. But Matt, I'm not sure if you gave a grade for Middleton on the Wizards.
For getting off of Kyle Kuzma and getting a pick, AJ, I'll say a C plus. Genuinely could not give an honest grade for this, just because to me it's just so weird that Chris Middleton's a Milwaukee, or not Milwaukee. I almost said Chris Middleton's a Milwaukee Buck. No, he is a Washington Wizard in 2025 when they are trying to tank.
Yeah.
I mean, some could argue that Chris Middleton, the way he plays sometimes, is tanking. But I like Chris Middleton.
Middleton will at least try. You can't
Right.
guarantee that Kuzma's going to try based on what we've seen this season.
Does any of this disrupt Koulibaly or anything like that? Because that's something where it's if I'm a team like Washington, I'm trying to make moves at the deadline, specifically with Kuzma, and disrupt Koulibaly's development. I don't think that's going to, but just in a vacuum, I don't want to do that. I don't want to disrupt.
No, I think it.
I don't want to.
I think it helps. I really think it helps him, Smart, Brogdon. I think they help these young guys. And bring it back to the Spurs trade, something that we didn't really talk about is De'Aaron Fox gets a little bit of that Chris Paul shine on him now. He might only be a half season, and he's already 27, but we've seen what happens when point guards spend time with Chris Paul. It was the same back in the 80s and 90s with Stockton. All these reserve guards would play with Stockton, and then they'd go out into the real world and they'd be much better than what they were. You learn from these great players. Now, Middleton and the other two aren't at that level, clearly, but they're going to have some know-how, add some professionalism to a young and incredibly raw side. As long as they're not playing 35 minutes a night, which I highly doubt they will be,
Right.
I think they'll be, the steady old head on the court and real leaders behind the scenes. I think 6 months of Smart, 6 months of Brogdon, 6 months of Middleton can only help these young guys in Washington.
It's the same thing with Chris Paul and Shea. When Shea, I think it was his second or third year in the league, and it was the best thing that happened to him in his career. So
Booker still talks about the effect. Dennis Schroeder, he still talks about that season in OKC and how much he learned. So, players learn from really, really good players. So, and Middleton is one of these guys who's not, he's a second round pick. He's not particularly athletic, but he's someone who turned himself into an all-star through skill and craft rather than being able to jump over tall buildings. So Koulibaly's got amazing athletic gifts. If he can learn some of that craft from Middleton, suddenly we're talking about a way more rounded basketballer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would say, to your point, Jared, it's only going to be beneficial for these guys, especially when it gets to around, March, April, and when it's around that time where you kind of want to reserve kind of these young guys so they don't, get hurt or anything like that. So they're, ripe and ready to trade in the off season. So, and kind of give a lot of these young guys a little bit more shine, especially closing out the season, trying to figure out and trying to like just keep pushing that young core forward, so they can kind of start growing into themselves a little bit and start like starting to become productive basketball players, and then potentially put themselves into like all-star status in a few years. But so like there's only good that can come out of that. Like the Wizards ain't going anywhere fast. So I guess we'll see when if things kind of like work out in the Wizards' favor in that regard. And then you got the Bucks kind of hoping that Kuzma is exactly what they were training for in terms of trading away one of the important cogs of a championship team a few years ago. Yeah, guys, that was the 2025 NBA trade deadline. The fiasco of Luka Doncic getting traded to the quiet moves, like Kyle Kuzma going to the Bucks, or actually no, or Chris Middleton going to the Wizards. If you guys did enjoy the video, please sure to like, share, and subscribe, and share it to your friends. Check us out on Better Sports Media to catch up on more NBA stuff, as well as all your favorite sports. Put a lot of good content on there for you guys. So yeah, guys, that's gonna do it for us. If you guys have any lasting thoughts,
let's go Heat, baby.
I'm gonna do some news breaking here, and this could really put the Spurs over the top. They've signed Bismack Biyombo to a 10-dayer.
Oh my God.